This allowed for good discussion. So this is something that's positive to keep going. There was talk about access for farmers. People were surprised that it had worked as well as it had, and that the farmer representatives that have attended have fitted in well. But we're also conscious that access to a stable internet connection was a problem, and that we need to think about that in the future. And we thought there were good ideas around the village hall conversations. It was raised that there felt like there was a tension, that a lot of the ideas explored and discussed require more people hours to implement, and yet farming is badly paid, insecure, and has many long hours required to do the work. So how do you overcome that tension? That feels like something, it's the elephant in the room that we need to explore. The other theme was COVID, how it's hard to make things work in normal circumstances, yet alone COVID circumstances. Who else to invite? There was a question raised around, should more powerful players be involved in this session? Should we be exploring those margins more? So get Iceland, the supermarket chain, to come in and talk about what their perspective of real food is and how it links up to the perspectives that have been discussed here. And then there was a lot of talk around collaborative working, but in the small talk and breakouts, there were comments like, we talk about collaboration, but we're not doing it in reality. So how do we actually facilitate collaborative working that is collaborative and feels inclusive for all people involved? I think that was something that came up. And then we need to build in more social interaction. That's where good conversations happen. And if we're going forwards, then the informal social stuff probably needs to be built in. My group, did I miss anything? No. Okay.
I'm going to seize the microphone back. Thank you so much for that, Anna. Becky, Becky, if you'd like to give us in up to a minute or perhaps two.
All right.
Quick summary.
Okay, I'll go for it. So key themes that we felt that had come out was there seems to be a big theme around the integration of trees and livestock that feels like it's really important for the north. So that was one theme that we feel has really kind of come out, and something we're really keen to have conversations around. Another big theme that came out was, sorry, I'm looking that way because I'm reading off the screen, was how valuable it is for people to actually be able to visit farms and have conversations on site and see things like actually case studies and that kind of thing. Again, that was interesting because I think it feels, just from the feedback I've had so far, it seems like the actual physical in-person events were really valued, but not so many people went. And again, maybe that's a COVID thing, but something to think about for the future is that they feel like they're valuable, but how do we get kind of good attendance for them? We spoke about very similar things to Anna in terms of the broadband and how is that impacting who could access. People have really good experiences of the tech support, but we also spoke about the village hall conversations on that side of things. Another theme that we felt it has been really good to have the northern perspective. People that had been to quite a lot of farming events further south just felt like, there are challenges that were discussed at this conference that just don't come up there very often. Like, for example, like working with, say, national parks and protected areas and obviously the upland kind of habitats. But building on that, we thought that perhaps one thing we could look at a little bit more in future is not just kind of tree planting in upland areas, but actually look at some of the different kinds of habitats. So like salt marsh, for example, salt marsh grazing, salt marsh as a carbon store. Like, there are some more like edgy type habitats that we could perhaps get into the, how you farm those in a kind of sensitive way, coming up a bit more. Other sort of gaps that we identified, like textiles, fibers, again, and this is a little bit running along this theme of like multifunctional landscapes, but it perhaps would have been nice to have a session on that. And we had question, like, because none of us are actually able to attend it, but about the diversity. I know that was a real theme that we wanted to kind of cover in the conference, and it seems like there's been a really good mix in terms of age and gender, like participating in the conference, but in other ways perhaps there's been you know, I've not seen, most people that I've met have been white, for example, or, you know, so I don't know how the diversity sessions went though, so it'd be interesting to get some feedback on that. Did I miss anything, my group? Please shout if I did. I can't see all your faces.
Okay, I'm seeing some thumbs up. Thank you so much for that, Becky. I'm going to ask either Melanie Hedgehog or Ellen to do a very quick summary, a minute, maybe two.
I'm happy to do it. Ellen, are you okay if I carry on?
Please do, please do. I was just scribing.
Okay. Yeah, so first one, themes, definitely need for more opportunities to network and collaborate between everyone, farmers, researchers, practitioners, because we felt that conversations are absolutely key. And how do we go forward with that now? Looking at Slack or Discord. It's, you know, keeping everything going. Another one key was the nutritional value of food, from soil quality and food quality, getting all the farms in a particular area involved, from the aspect of local, properly produced, healthy food as against the industrial guys. That was really important as well. Another theme was education. Ecological monitoring, conservation knowledge, and that's education right through from children at primary school through to colleges and to people that are actually working on the land as well. So that was another key one. Issues with broadband, particularly people that haven't got broadband, such as the islands and highlands, and how we could look at involving them, possibly by having sessions where they could get together as groups, come across to the mainland and be in a group situation so that they can actually find somewhere together where they can access the conference. So I think that's really key for next year as well. And then another one was basically finding, for all these different groups that are doing really good work, is just having one voice. So basically we need an alternative to the NFU, and we were discussing that because basically we don't really want to be bothered with the NFU, and the Food and Farming Countryside Commission, that's the sort of thing that they're working on. So it would be brilliant for them to keep in touch and see how it develops, because if we could have something like that, it would be absolutely phenomenal, because that's what we really, really need. So that were the themes. And then if we're mentioning gaps, we would like a real nitty-gritty tips and techniques for regenerative farming, in particular mob grazing, and how do you overwinter your cows? How can you keep your cows outside? Particularly the farther north you get worse and worse winters. So something on that line would be brilliant. Yes, wool and textiles, absolutely key. We need a big session about uses, all the different uses of wool. More on soils as well. The more we can do on soils, the better. Yeah, but overall, the mixture of sessions were absolutely inspiring and very uplifting. Anything else from my group?
Okay, excellent job. Anna, we might be running 1 or 2 minutes over. So I'm going to ask Rachel Marshall to go next. If you keep it to about a minute or so, you'll be a hero. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, so our key themes are similar to other people's. So soil health and its kind of connection with ecological processes came up, and uplands and how farmers connect with their land was very important. We had a discussion around diversity, and it was very heartening that diversity was part of the conversation and that there were sessions on this. We talked a lot about communication, and about this kind of came up in so many of the sessions, like the value of having like a common language, but also accepting and kind of being willing to other people's kind of background, perspectives and language, and taking time to understand each other. And there was like this feeling that there's clearly lots of potential overlap and common themes are across the whole of all the people that have been attending, but outside of sometimes environments like this, it's very hard to know where you can have those connections, and how can you carry on the conversations and have those networks of support when you all go back, I guess, to your various parts of the country and or whatever you work in. I should stop, but there was more here and it's on the document, and my group, feel free to add any comments to the document. It's open, it's live, so anyone else can add stuff. Is that okay?
Fantastic job, Rachel. And Helena, if you'd like to do the same, brief is great, but please share what happened in your group.
I'll be really fast. Okay, so we spoke about soil health, which was raised over and over again, how great it was for people who are established to be able to talk to people who are on the beginning of the kind of journey. We said that there was a lot of talk about barriers to entry for retail, and that's to do with regulatory and market constraints. The talks about land ownership. There's a lot of regional variation, and Lancaster seems to have a really established network, which isn't as strong as other areas in the north and Scotland. It would be great to link up the northwest and the northeast slightly more. And that it's great that so many people will be able to access the talks after the event online. We did feel that maybe there was a bit of an echo chamber, and that increased kind of diversity would benefit everybody. And that under normal circumstances, farm visits would be really helpful. We were thinking that maybe a podcast would also be good, and that participants who are watching the debates should be able to have more feedback following on from the talks. That's it.
Excellent job, Helena. Thank you so much. Anna, I'd like to welcome you back and pass you the microphone.
Great. I just want to add that all of the notes that have been typed up, the steering group will be going through them. So I'm aware that I forgot some things after reading through, so they won't be lost. They will come back in. Okay, so we're now going into the wild visioning part of this session. And by this, we have 15 minutes or so to really dream big and to remove all your hesitations, worries about what's not possible, and just expand to think about what is possible. And I'm going to ask you to wild dream about 2 specific things. And I want you to be, when we ask you these questions, I want you to be thinking in the long term. So the first question I will share is thinking about in 10 years' time. I'll stop waffling. So in the chat, I put a link, and that goes to Mentimeter. So if you all click on that link or copy and paste it into a new browser, you should see a question that says, what will farming in the north be like in 10 years? And when you answer this, please don't think about, oh, climate change is going to happen, we're all screwed, Brexit's going to mean that all the farms close. Think about what do we want it to look like in 10 years' time, based on if everything that we heard about during this conference was possible and we put it in place. And so this is farming as a whole in the north of England and Scotland. And you can put multiple words in, but actually it's a bit sneaky. There are 25 characters, so you can put spaces in between words and they'll be accepted. So just spend 2 minutes or so just putting in or sharing your vision for farming in the north for 10 years' time.
Ellen, would you like to stop sharing your screen now?
Yeah, in a minute, Ellen, I will ask you to,
I thought you wanted them all to pop up as they were coming.
I do, yeah.
So you do want it shared?
Yes, please.
Sorry.
So someone said that we can't enter full sentences, I'm afraid. So you have to think of your fullest sentences and boil it down to keywords. So you'll start to notice that Ellen's screen is pulling together some of the words that we're sharing. And diverse landscapes, diverse peoples coming up, thriving ecosystems, no food deserts. Thriving's in there a lot, from thriving communities through to networks to dialogue. There are lots of people saying the absence of negative things, so non-polluting. Where was the other one? No food deserts, which I've said. But yeah, the key things that are coming out of this word cloud: thriving communities, diverse landscapes, diverse people, inclusive, friendly, diverse, regenerative, connected. Great. I'll give us a few more minutes to just... Oh yes, shared wealth. Okay, we're going to go on to the next question now. For Eye on the Land, you're saying the form has disappeared. Do you mean Mentimeter? So you should be able to click on the link again and it should come up for you again as a window. All right, great. So can you get it back up by clicking on the link? So Ellen, can we move to the next question now, please? Great. So the next question asks us to think more about this community that started to form during this conference and the community that this conference has potential to catalyze and build. So when we think of our communities, what do we hope that this will look like in 3, 5, or 10 years' time? So again, please enter up to 25 characters or keywords.
Hannah's just said our community as in the conference community.
Yes, so but by that we're talking about the real farming community. So think about the conference as representing the real farming community in the north. So some of the keywords that are being brought out from the word cloud include connected, diverse has come up again, inclusive, invested locally, friendly, sharing and communicating. There's a lot of sharing words in there, sharing experience, sharing knowledge, sharing skills. Well resourced, wouldn't that be lovely? Happy. Informed. Inspiring. can't keep up with the changes now. And I can't read the smaller words. Influential, that's a good word. And it's come up a few times. Empowered. It should not be asking for a code. That's very strange. So if you copy and paste the whole of that link, it should bring it up for you.
The code is in the screen, 67, 67, 78.
It is, but you shouldn't need it with that link that I put in the chat. Okay. So, Ellen, can you stop sharing your screen again? Thank you. So from those two questions, there were common themes across both of them. So diversity came up in all senses, that this idea of allowing flows of information, whether that's skills, knowledge, expertise, contacts, that we're well connected, empowered, inspiring. All of these things kept coming up for both the wider community and for those involved in this conference. And I don't want to go over my time for this section, but I just want to invite, does anyone want to expand on what they've shared through Mentimeter? Would they like to build on some of the terms or words that they've inputted in? Just raise your hand if you wish to speak or unmute yourself. Taria.
A couple of people picked up on this. It's about inspirational farmers, or farmers who are well respected in their local community, can have a big influence on bringing other farmers in to an event. And it might not necessarily be a farmer who's very nature friendly, but somebody who's well respected because they're also got good livestock as well, or they've got, you know, the best ram that sold, you know, at the auction mark the previous year, but they've got an empathy in what your message that you're trying to share.
Thank you. Matthew Adams, and then I'll go to Claire.
Thanks, Hannah. I was just thinking of the idea of a knowledge hub, and we're creating a knowledge base that's centered in nature-friendly farming, and people in the future will want to know how to do it, and so they can come towards this knowledge base where people are happy to share that information because it's centered in this sort of arena. So we've got, you know, the arena in Oxford, and then this perhaps happening in Wales. So that's an interesting thought that just popped into my head. We're creating the knowledge for the future, and people will want to tap into that.
Yeah, and the Welsh Real Farming Conference is acting as this as well, and the Scottish one if they form one. That's a really good way of looking at it. Thank you. Claire.
I was one of the people that put in diversity quite a lot, and also resilience, because diversity in all the senses, in terms of biodiversity, diversity and inclusion, and even diversification of farms. In all senses, diversity brings resilience, and often in the past when I've been doing sustainability work in adult ed, trying to explain to people why diversity matters, it's because it brings resilience, and we're certainly going to need plenty of it to get where we want to go. So, and sometimes, you know, we have to explain and build resilience, and diversity matters in every single sense of the word.
Thank you, Claire. And just building on that idea, diversity and knowledge types as well need to be valued. So Hannah Fields put in the chat, valuing multiple types of knowledge is so important, and bringing these together to inform science, practical actions and policy. Robert Mills, your hand is up.
Yeah, I think this has been a beautiful sort of example of all of our shared values and qualities here, and it's really encouraging. And I don't want to sound cynical at all. I think this is something we need to think about. So 68% of us are not farmers from our poll at the beginning. And of those farmers that are here, I would argue are clearly very motivated. So how do we get this wonderful energy to connect wider? And, you know, I really feel that we have a challenge, an exciting challenge there, but that should be part of our conversation. How do we convey this? But also, how do we get the word cloud from the people that weren't here for whatever reason? I think that's really exciting. Otherwise, we're in this bubble of happiness.
And that's a great point to move on to the next stage. So the vision is that this is inclusive, and to be inclusive, you have to be addressing accessibility and engagement. So we need to be doing everything you just described, Rob. And the next part of today's session is looking at, from our vision, how do we practically start moving there? And so to address some of your concerns might mean that all of our team go to the auction marts and do this sort of exercise there whilst people are selling sheep or whatever. But hold that, and I will pass over to Ellen now.
Brilliant, thank you very much. And yeah, that was a really good segue into next steps. And I think a lot of people have already been thinking about next steps. So I just wanted to say a little bit of context. So this is, you know, this was an experiment really for all of us. It's not what we visioned when we originally planned it. We're planning a face-to-face event. So the first thing to say is, in terms of next steps, like, we really want all of your feedback, obviously through this, but also through the feedback form and any other mechanism that you want to give it to us. And I guess one of the things that we had our eye on was, you know, how do we maintain the momentum of the event, and yeah, how do we plan for kind of legacy and continuation? And we did excitingly find out last night that we have had some funding confirmed from the Farming the Future bid. So that's a brilliant, yeah, well-timed piece of news. So that's really exciting, because it means that what we tried to do in that bid was to kind of fund a collaborative process, so that there would be some coordination resource, so that we could continue to work with all of the groups and the stakeholders, like within the north of England and the north more generally, and that we would be able to both host kind of fora where we could all share our plans and aspirations, so that the whole kind of network was mutually beneficial to all those organisations and individuals, but also so that we could do some activities throughout the year as well. So it wouldn't just be a kind of a single conference and then, you know, kind of everything sort of dissipates. So I suppose I just wanted to sort of say that in terms of a bit of context for the next steps. So obviously we'll have to, you know, we'll be reviewing all of the outcomes and the outcomes from this next session as well. And not saying that to constrain any of your thoughts, so please be bold in the next, you know, 15 minutes. Let us know what, from your perspective, what you think would be helpful, and hopefully we can weave that into the kind of the process that we've now had funding for, which will be really helpful. I think that's what I was going to say by way of introduction. So we're going to go back into the breakout rooms for about 10 to 15 minutes. So if you could focus now on thinking about those inspiring visions and thinking about how we now take some steps to realise them, then that would be brilliant. Over to you, Martin.
Okay, I'm just going to send everyone back to the same rooms they're in. John, are you there? Can you hear me? Hiya. Would you like to click on the thing that says go to room, whichever? Welcome back, everybody. Hi. So if I can do the same thing again, I'm going to get the session hosts just to see if you can summarize any key next steps. I'm going to ask you again to sort of see what you can do to be as brief as possible so that we have more time to get everyone else to have a few words before we need to finish today. I'm going to go in the same order for the same reasons, which means Anna, if you could do a quick summary, that'd be amazing. Next steps.
First of all, celebrate what's worked well. You've done a good job. Second, think about more events like this. They could be quarterly, regionally themed, but find the right level to work at. And then do a mapping exercise to make sure any events we do build on what's already happening. And that's networks from farm to plate, glass, fabric, flower, all of them. And then think about a communication plan for how we disseminate the videos and sessions we have got, this huge wealth of material, to facilitate further discussions, connection and actions among farmers across the North that haven't attended, but are connected to people that might have attended. And how do we then showcase real farmers that have attended to consumers and build up that loyalty to supporting real farmers? And then run farmer discussions across North England and Scotland to find out what else this conference and network could do. The suggestion of placements with real farmers to build and address that labour gap issue. Could we expand on the woofing network to include real farmers that showcased during the Real Farming Conference? And I just want to mention that Alejandro is on a really big learning journey right now with his own research. So there's a transformative journey happening there, and I'll stop.
Excellent job. Thank you. And Becky, and from now on, actually, can I ask you just to pick out some key highlights from next steps? We will have them recorded. Becky.
Yes, I think diversity was a key theme in our discussion. We started thinking a lot about how we could interface with all different cultures, from a lot of the Asian and more urban-based communities in our region through to, we feel it's really important to try and work on bridging the sort of the plant-based and animal livestock kind of divides, and also the divides between, you know, say organic and pasture for life, and the idea that people are in competition. And we thought a lot about, we had some fascinating thoughts on sort of social aspects of farmer communities and how we look after those, so that Neil and Bill were saying about the workaholic culture in farming, and that farmers only meet at auction marts and they only talk to other farmers, and how can we kind of break out of this a little bit. So yeah, it was all about diversity, I think, our conversation.
That was excellent, thank you. And let's do the same again. Melanie Hedgehog. Key highlights.
Yeah, we just talked about using different technology methods like Slack and Discord to keep in touch, having like lists put together with links to all different sources of information. We also mentioned the Northern Real Farming Conference working with the Food and Farming Countryside Commission, maybe to do a map and have all organisations and everything put on the map, because there seems to be a huge, there seems to be gaps, huge areas where there's gaps and nobody knows what's going on. We also mentioned Northern Real Farming Conference ambassadors going out on a roadshow, of ambassadors promoting everything that we've covered this time and what we're going to do in the future, and also pledges. If people go away, have a think about it over the weekend and see if they can make a pledge to support the conference in some way going forwards. So I think that was the main points.
Excellent job, thank you so much. Rachel Marshall, key highlights of next steps.
Yeah, so we had a discussion that basically said that something like Groundswell is a really nice kind of model which attracts a lot of farmers, and has 1,000 farmers that has like a mixture of organic and non-organic, and a real like mixing pot of ideas. And it's like it's built around the idea of a farm show or like a county show, which farmers are much more used to kind of going to. And it's much more practical and on the ground. So maybe having a mixture of kind of the Northern Real Farming Conference being like a knowledge hub and having this more intellectual discussion in some ways. It's what the group said, but also combined with something that's much more practical and much more potentially available and accessible to a wider group of farmers. So yeah, and connecting on the ground, that came up quite a bit. We had the same discussion as well about this kind of need to bridge the urban-rural divide and get more connections between the urban populations, I guess, and the food system, which after all, there's lots of us that live in cities and we're very responsible for the food systems around us, but don't have much kind of say on how they form. And education as well was very important with farmers and with the wider society. And then the last thing was about benchmarking, and like finding this common language is something that farmers do actually use, and farming groups like the HDB, they do benchmarking, and it's about integrating measures that actually represent real farming values into these kind of wider organisations that already interact with a lot of farmers.
That is fantastic. Thank you. Helena, key highlights.
Okay, so we've said that there should be improved access to training and there should be skill shares, and there should be frameworks for people to kind of reference for building resilient food systems. And after the event, you should be able to connect with other local participants and viewers, and that would be part of a farming network. We said that there possibly should be information about recruitment and apprenticeship opportunities and access to funding. It might be a nice idea to take part in county shows, so things like the Yorkshire Show. We were talking about land banking and conversations around legacies and opportunities, especially in regards to access to land, which came up over and over again in conversations. We said that there needs to be a middle way between access to the internet and in-person events. Stephen was saying that it might be a really good idea for everybody to get a food hamper to go along with the event, so that you can kind of sample what everybody's talking about, and it might be nice to have a linked online shop to that. And I was thinking something, you could have a really nice journey where if people were talking about a product that they wanted to create but needed advice, that maybe the next year you could buy it online. So John, for example, was talking about his cheese. Where are you? That maybe next year you've made that cheese and we can buy it online. And then we were also talking about linking up similar topographies. So you wouldn't necessarily want somebody just from the north talking about northern farming. Maybe there are other national and international areas with similar topographies that we could link up. And just that there need to be more links with established networks and institutions. I know that other people have spoken about that. And the inclusivity and informality is kind of what makes the conference what it is, and that shouldn't be lost. And that's it.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So we are sort of running really short on time. It would be amazing if we had enough space to actually hear from all of you, sort of closing last words. We're probably not going to get round to everyone. And we do need to give a couple of minutes for last words from Ellen as the sort of lead conference organizer. So what I'm going to do, if I'm going to invite you just to take a breath, if you can think of maybe 1 to 5 words that represent something you'd like to say right now, get ready. And I'm going to choose those people who just look like they're most ready to say something and haven't already spoken. And we've only got a couple of minutes for that, and I'm going to hand over to Ellen. So let's see. Hannah, you look like you're desperate to say something. I can tell by the look on your face. I'd like to unmute.
Exciting connections and networks.
Fantastic. I can't quite read that. Is that Tanya? Would you like to unmute yourself? I might come back to you. Stephen Jacobs, any last words?
Oh, crikey. Linking food, farming and people.
Brilliant. Thank you. Claire Gould, any thoughts? Last words?
Linking what we eat with where it comes from.
Thank you so much. I don't think we've heard much from not in the main space. John Thomas, any last words?
Was me. Probably more questions, yes, yet still to be answered.
Okay. Who's down the bottom row? Adrian Lovett.
Hi. Thank you. Well done. Keep going.
Excellent. Andrew Melville.
Alternative NFU. Lots of farmer, by the way.
Lots of smiles and thumbs up to that one. Victoria, any last words while you're crocheting?
Well done, and thank you very much for putting it together.
Excellent. Matthew. Would you like to unmute?
I want to say something about positive energy. When a group comes together, there's such positive energy. Love it.
Neil.
Making farming more sustainable, obviously economically, obviously environmentally, but most importantly for me, socially.
Fantastic. Siobhan, any last words?
Just point, Bill Grayson's unmuted as well.
Oh,
yeah, I just quickly to go back to Colin Tudge's distinction between hope and optimism. So, you know, what we need to do is convert what hopes we have into optimism, and then, you know, maybe by the conference after that, they've begun to become reality.
Thank you so much. And last but not least, I'm sorry we don't have more time, everybody, to get everyone's last words, but Siobhan, any last words?
Just enormous gratitude for the amount that I've learned from scratch. Thank you very much to everybody who's helped in that process.
And that was an amazing demonstration of conciseness, brevity, clarity. Thank you so much. Ellen, would you like to have the very last words?
Oh, thank you. I'm not sure how I can follow that, but just, I guess, just to say thank you. Obviously, tomorrow's set up as a day of action and reflection. So building on the kind of pledge theme, we're going to be publishing all of the outcomes from the sessions. The videos are going online, but it's a chance in the spirit of kind of creating the vision that we want to see. It's also an invitation to share widely with your networks, and also to commit, take on anything that, you know, speaks to you. And if you like having someone that knows that you've committed to an action, feel free to email me. I'll be delighted to know what you're all taking on, and feel free not to, obviously. And yeah, just, you know, it feels like it's been a really important event. It's been, you know, really timely, and I feel like it's been welcomed, and it's worked well. It was definitely an experiment for us. So thank you all for your, you know, your participation and and engagement. And thank you obviously to all the team and the speakers and everyone that's been involved. It takes everyone to make a community. So yeah, thank you for being here, and thank you for being part of it. We have one more session this evening. One more session. Please come and hear the tunes from Wimpot Farm, and then yeah, we'll get busy co-creating what's next. So yeah, thank you everyone.
And that really is the end. So feel free to unmute yourselves and wave and say goodbye, and any last things you want to just blurt out.
Can I just say this is yet another session that I wasn't planning to stay to the end.
How many had you decided that for?
I'm not telling you.
Oh, I'm glad you stayed. Thank you.
No, thank you.
Yeah, thanks everyone. It's been great.
Thank you.
He's up.
And remember to celebrate tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, bye all. See you on the other side.
Bye everyone.
Hey, bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye. Thank you.
I feel a little bit emotional.
We stopped the recording.